Warriors in 7, but the Warriors, they how many series now they've won a road game, so they could do it in 6. Let's see, but I think the Warriors can beat them, but it's going to be a battle. They're going to be the hardest team that they faced in the playoffs, definitely.
Wow, gentlemen, it's been a long time since we've had this kind of a pod. Things have changed. Things have really changed recently. Back to being on top of the West. We're back, baby. But there's still one more belt to get, and that is the World Championship. But you know what? We'll get to that later. Let's just celebrate where we are today. Right now, it is Sunday morning out here in California. I'm your host, Daniel Hardy, the Gold-Blooded King, and I have 2 people you may know from previous podcasts, including the Dub Nation HQ group chat Fury, and the Dubs Are Screwed. Like, we've had many different iterations, but we've got Patrick Murray all the way from the UK, and we've got Dubby Dubs from right here in Oakland. Gentlemen, how are you doing on this Sunday morning?
Real good, Daniel. I feel fantastic today.
Yeah, seconded. Me too.
Fantastic. Question: are you surprised the Warriors are Western Conference champions again?
A little bit, I think, is the honest answer. The Warriors, they lost. What those 2 lost years were tough to take. And I think all of us were sort of thinking the same thing along the lines of, they'll finish sort of middle of the playoff race. But once you get to the playoffs, you never know. But, if I was assigning a probability to that happening, it probably would have been, low, especially all the way up through here, but I think if you had asked me maybe a month into the season, it would have been much stronger. The Warriors, and maybe that's part of was I surprised? It's just my recency bias. Like, watching them come out to the strong start, and then Iguodala goes out, Clay comes back in all sort of wobbly. Steph and Draymond both deal with injuries, but you could see, I wrote multiple times about the proof of concept. Like, this team was blowing people out to elite levels at peak dynasty sort of vibes. So not really surprised we're here now, but day of the Wiggins trade, I probably would have been much more vocally doubtful.
See, I'm not that surprised. I mean, I wrote something after the 2019 finals that basically was along the lines of, it's the end of a golden era, but not necessarily the end of the Warriors dynasty. I said, there were 2 basic ways they could get back. One, obviously, quickest was re-sign Kevin Durant. Didn't happen. Second was to get younger. Now, obviously, that's a really difficult thing to do. And they have done a really good job. And they took a lot of risks in that. So the D'Angelo Russell trade was a risk. And the Wiggins trade was a risk at the time. It's turned out better than maybe anyone except you, Mr. Gold-Blooded King over there, could have possibly imagined. But it really has turned out. But I think once we got to, as we talked about last time, once we got to this season, once we had that start, I felt pretty confident that they were had a really good chance of making the finals again this year. And but it was going to come down to health, and they've been healthier at this point in the playoffs than they have been any other point in the season. They're going into the finals, so Gary Payton potentially, news that he's going to be back in action potentially. You expect Porter to be back, maybe even Iguodala. See, but then you've got a pretty deep rotation of proven playoff players before you even get to the young guys. So I'm not surprised, but I am appreciative, I would say. This feels to me like, if I can characterize each one, like 2015 was almost like, they were just the best team, and they kept winning. A couple of moments of adversity against Memphis and then Cleveland in the finals, but they were the best team and they won. Great, hooray. Then you had 2016, obviously all of that, the lowest of lows. Then 2017, the best team you've ever seen. 2018, everyone was kind of a bit bored. I mean, we didn't really appreciate the grind. And I think, now these 2 lost years, I think you saw it in all the players, but I think just from, all of our perspective, to see them back, it's a big thing that they've done to get there. So I'm just soaking it in at the moment. So yeah, not necessarily surprised, but because I thought they could do it. I never really lost faith in that Steph, Clay and Dre thing, because they got to the finals when Kevin Durant went down in that last year. So it was still there. And, now obviously asterisks all over the place, like Chris Paul, who could have predicted he wouldn't have come out of the conference semi-finals? I mean, you never could have predicted that. But, that aside, feels pretty good, I would say. And they're in a good spot, I think.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that 2015 run, because I remember feeling like I knew we were good, but I also thought we were pretty good that previous year when we got knocked out by the Clippers. I remember thinking like, we have a really good shot at doing some things. In my mind, nice cup there, by the way, nice mug. I saw us being like, hey, if we can knock off the Spurs, the championship's ours. And we lost to the Clippers in 7 games. And I was like, wait, what? And that's when you knew Mark Jackson had to go, because the team had such high potential. That 2015 year, when we were rolling, it was kind of scary to me, because I didn't know if we were that kind of team that looks good in the regular season and then flames out Phoenix Suns. Phoenix Suns. Oh, sorry. And so the adversity we went through, especially going down 2-1 to Memphis, that was when it kind of hit like, man, you know what, maybe we need a few more pieces. And the team just like, bursts through that whole adversity wall and destroys them and basically ruins their franchise. And you're like, wait a minute, these guys are like pretty serious about this. So fast forward to where we are now. I had some of those same concerns going to the playoffs, because I just didn't know how this particular group would work. I had high hopes, obviously, and I believe that from the regular season, there was plenty of proof that they could get some things done. But this team isn't healthy. I mean, I would have loved to have seen James Wiseman on the floor in these playoffs. I would have really loved that. You know what I mean? If you said Kevon Looney's going to have to become Kevon Rodman, I'd have been like, wow, okay, good luck to us. You know what I mean? But the fact that those things actually happened, and I keep thinking back to the offseason hiring of the coaches, the coaching staff. When we said we got Jokic's old coach to come be our big man coach, and you see Looney out there dominating in a way I never thought he could. I mean, remember that 2019 team, like, we thought we were going to cakewalk to the finals, obviously, but we had Jerebko, McKinney, Quinn Cook. Like this year's depth blows it out the water. And so even if we haven't been, I mean, think about it, this hasn't been a healthy year for us at all. Like Clay, Dre, Steph, and the rotation players. Andre, Gary Payton breaks his arm damn near. Like, this hasn't been a healthy year for us. But the fact that teams are so terrified of us still lets you know that this may be the deepest team we've ever had, because we just don't miss beats. So I want to talk about that a little bit. When you look at this Western Conference journey, like, when they make the end of the year VHS tape, like, remember all the memories they had? Like, when you think about this Western Conference playoff run, what comes to mind? Like, who would you think was going to be a tougher position? Who were you expecting to play and didn't play? How was the journey to you guys?
Well, it's a highlight tape, so all the bad stuff goes away. Those that blowout against the Grizzlies and Klay Thompson breaking a lot of shots, those don't make the video. But extended Looney highlights, extended Wiggins highlights. I'll put a bunch of Jordan Poole in there too. And then, your steady diet of the core with Game 6. Klay showed up. Steph is still like... Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a player that's such a high priority for opposing defenses. Like, he's not just getting doubled, like he is getting doubled all the time. But there's pictures from a minute or two into the game where it's him on one side of the screen with everybody around him, and then like the rest of his team is on the other side. He is such a destructive force out there just by hanging out. But really, I would strongly highlight the team element. Looney and Wiggins have been phenomenal. Looney in particular. I mean, I think Wiggins had sort of showed proof that he would show up. He's been one of the team's most solid players all year. But and Looney has too, I guess. But the way that Looney has dominated against teams that are known as a problem because of the sort of system design, right? The Warriors took some very aggressive gambles on their team design. No traditional center. Wiseman, may have factored into that, but once they knew he was out, they were like, fuck it. We're just going to go with what we got. And, Bjelica didn't look that great at portions of the season, and he really was all the way out of the rotation in the playoffs. And then, necessity makes him call up and he shows up big against the Mavericks. And now you're like, well, maybe this guy can kind of play for us. So there's been a lot of sort of surprise elements, but I think that, and this is something that you were schooling me from the very beginning, Daniel, is that the core, dude, it's just having Steph Curry and Draymond Green and Klay Thompson out there healthy together. That's enough to break teams, dude. They're totally so solid and they always show up. But it's interesting seeing them age and then new players come out. Like, I really love watching Jordan Poole and Kayvon Looney and Andrew Wiggins. Like, I was deeply skeptical of the Bridge to the Future plan, but it does look like they've managed to find some guys around the edges that are like legitimate pieces, like those old Bulls teams you were talking about. Who's going to be our coach? Who knows? Sometimes it's Otto Porter, sometimes it's Bjelica, sometimes there is no coach and you just have Rodman instead.
What's interesting on the same tip you just mentioned, there has been many times where I felt like the core three was kind of stuck in the mud. It was like, wow, no one's shots falling. Dre's in foul trouble, about to get thrown out the game. And then all of a sudden Jordan Poole's like, okay, my turn. And he's been throwing the fire so much over the last couple of years, first with no core. And then when he has a core, trying to figure out I'm on the bench, am I starting, things of that nature, that he's seen so much in his young years that now when it's playoff time and Steph and Klay are getting shackled up a little bit and Draymond's not doing his thing, all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, Jordan Poole can get you 35. I forgot. Oh yeah. I mean, and then you got Wiggins flying in for rebounds like his life depends on it. Like, this dude literally is like, oh, Steph shot it, he missed it, I will die for this rebound. You're like, damn, Wiggins, like, I never thought you'd be, a wing player who becomes the most dominant wing rebounder in the history of basketball.
He's hungry. He's so hungry out there.
Yeah, I mean, for me, completely agree with all that. I think, particular moments like Gary Payton in closing out the Nuggets, that was big. Looney Game 6 in Memphis, like against a really physical front line. He was great against Dallas, but I will say I've never seen a team that deep in the playoffs with that weak an interior defense. And it's a real indictment on the two teams and the centers on those two teams that they beat before, because it was just like, one dribble,
so many layups,
step, you were out late. You can't be a serious contender with that. And that's the thing they've got to sort out, obviously. But Looney really, in Game 6 against Memphis, that was huge. Wiggins, as you say, turning into super hustle guy. Who would have predicted that in Minnesota? And then I think for me, the thing that I've really, two things I've really loved from the core. One is the last few years, we've, and a couple of times we talked about before, Warriors in close games haven't been that good in the regular season. In this playoff run, Steph in particular, but all of them, they've closed games, and Steph has really closed games, and that he's been fantastic. And then the other thing is just seeing Klay, Game 6 against Memphis, Game 5 and closing out Dallas, he's so close to what he was. And after everything he's gone through, that's just amazing. And I think the other bit for me that makes people feel pretty confident, whatever the finals series is, they're getting better. This is the best they played. The Mavericks series was the best they played all season. They've got better and better. They've come through every test. And I think, as I say, they're in a really good spot. And, they've got all these pieces, Looney, Wiggins, Payton coming back. You've also got the next generation. The interesting thing about the two timelines thing is the next generation isn't even part of this, right? This is the core and the middle bit, Jordan Poole, who we've talked about before, and you're absolutely right, his ability to break down defense, get into the paint, just create havoc. He's so slippery. He just can get anywhere. The Warriors just haven't had a player like that at all alongside Steph Curry, probably since Monte Ellis, really. So to have that in this line is incredible. You got Wiggins, who's middle of career. Looney, still early middle of career. I mean, he's been around for years, but yeah, that kind of two timeline thing, that's next season and the season beyond. So what, for me, it's they're here now, right? But this isn't some last hurrah. This isn't the last dance. They've got, the cupboard is stocked for next season and the season after and the season after that, maybe even, I mean, let's see how it goes. But that's the point of the two timelines thing. If you're good enough now, stock up so that you're good enough over 3-4 years. And they're good enough now. So let's see what happens in this series and see what happens next couple of years. But this could be another little run here.
You put Poole in with the middle age gap. I would say the middle bridge is Wiggins and Looney. Poole's 22 years old.
He's young, yeah. So in terms of the quality of his play, like where he is in his game, I put him in with that group. But you're right.
I count that first year as 7 years. That first year as a rookie was about 7 years. So terrible.
Brutal.
I think it's like 7 years for all of us, right? Trying to watch that. But yeah, like no, you're right. I mean, he's the age. It's but those guys are like teenagers, most of them. So but Paul, game wise, his game is so mature, and he's like so experienced now from this run. You can see like he's ready. And he's like their secret weapon, I think. Well, not so secret weapon, but like he's the one who breaks things, because you can't cover him, Clay, and
exactly. Well, that's why I would put him in as the next phase. This team is sort of it exists is the core does their core, and you sort of fill in the edges around them. I think that when you start to talk about bridge, then you're talking about them being primarily defined by something else. What happens when Steph and Clay aren't the biggest concern for the opposing defense? That to me is Jordan Poole, 22 years old, up for a big contract extension, buys into the culture, works hard all the time. Everybody loves him. He's totally part of the whole celebratory vibe. Everyone's rooting for each other. The point of the next phase is like, Kuminga and Moody, can they take those next steps? Can Poole learn how to play defense? And it looked against the Mavericks. Again, you guys are talking about how we're looking as good as we have all season. He had a lot of slip ups, but you could see him making some marginal improvements there by the end, not reaching and stuff like that.
Guys, James Wiseman is going to be the best player out of that group. And it's going to break basketball.
I've learned not to call you out, Daniel. That's wild.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's wild too. But what Patrick just said about how shocking it was at the bigs couldn't hurt us. You look at the Phoenix Suns, DeAndre Ayton, who, I mean, respect to him as a basketball player. He can do things I can't do. So, I'm not hating. But in terms of the tier of like center he is, no one's scared, right?
Mm-hmm. That's why they're not going to pay him.
Okay. So for me, I'm looking at James Wiseman being like, okay, at least be as good as DeAndre Ayton. Like, at least do that. Get a hook shot, dunk on people, get some rebounds. Okay, et cetera, et cetera. But we know this guy's like trying to be like Kevin Durant-ish with his like, I want to shoot threes. I want to take people triple threat. He wants to be Giannis-ish, where he's like, get the rebound, just run, and dunk on your head. Like the highlight package from this guy is horrifying. Like, remember it's been a while. Go back and look at his highlights. You were like, wait a minute, if this guy figures out anything, and he was doing it with very little spacing around him. There was no Klay Thompson on the floor. Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, Jordan Poole on the floor. James Wiseman is never going to see a double team. He's going to be getting rebounds all the time. The game is going to be so easy for him. Of course, he has to show it, he has to develop. But if we can get Looney getting 26 rebounds in a playoff game, what is this 7'2" athletic freak going to do? Health permitted. So that's why I'm putting his name in the ring as we got Poole, Moody, Kuminga. I think that's I guess I was going to throw JTA in there for you, the town's sake, but I'm not going to. Okay. Poole, Moody, Kuminga, Wiseman in the East would be a 9 seed for sure. For sure, a 9 seed, right? So I'm super excited about that whole situation. But I don't want to count the chickens before they're hatched, because we still have some work to do now. We have to finish our food now. And so I just want to put that clip in posterity so that 3 years down the road, it's like, didn't Daniel Hardy say Wiseman was going to be the MVP? Yeah, I did. I said it right here. Record this, right? Reach for the stars, land on the moon. So coming up, let's talk about our preview here. Wow, the Boston Celtics, they did it. The Boston Celtics are in the finals. Tough 7 games. They won the road. What's your series prediction for them coming all the way to Chase Center against the Dubs for the finals? I'll start with you, Pat.
So I think the Warriors have got several things in their favor. So they got home court. They've got all the experience. As I said, they've been getting better all along. They've been, excellent in the clutch. The thing that worries me about Boston is, defensively, they're like what we saw with Memphis when Memphis didn't have Ja Morant. And the Warriors, but they can actually, they've got some offensive talent to score as well. So it will be a tough series. I do think that they haven't seen a defense as good as, they definitely haven't seen a defense as good as Warriors defense, because Warriors had certainly when they were healthy, had the number one defense by a massive differential. And then obviously they took them over at the end there. So I think it's going to be like a 90s style basketball in a way, but with some threes chucked in. But home court advantage and experience, for me, that's probably enough to see the Warriors over the line. But yeah, so Warriors in 7. But the Warriors, they how many series now they've won a road game, so they could do it in 6. Let's see. But I think the Warriors can beat them, but it's going to be a battle. They're going to be the hardest team that they faced in the playoffs, definitely.
Yeah, I would say that Warriors in 6. I just don't see teams beating this version of the Warriors 3 times. That's more than what it is to me. It seems like a lot of the games they lost is sort of, you can't beat this team that many times in a row. And that's where the Warriors sort of, the other team changes something unexpectedly and you steal a game here and there, but then the Warriors adjust. If we're playing the Celtics, I feel like I think Patrick's right about the 90s level defense on defense battle with some threes thrown in. It's going to be just a defensive clinic with a lot of guys chipping in. And that's where if Gary Payton come back, it'll be huge. If Iguodala can come back, it's going to be big. Just to mix it in there, one of the things about the Warriors being hurt this year is they've been able to tinker with a lot of different lineup combinations. And I think Kerr was sort of bummed out on a professional level that he doesn't have access to Andre Iguodala or Gary Payton. And I'm still pretty skeptical that Iguodala will come back at all. But if Gary Payton can really return from that elbow and play a few minutes, and you don't need much, like 7 minutes from Gary Payton would be a huge asset, especially because, guys like Belly maybe are a little too slow for to just keep up. This is a sort of series where the centers are going to get played off the floor. And then, Boston, though, has some weaknesses. Like, I know that they adjusted and they did well, but the Heat screwed with Jason Tatum on that zone defense to start the series. Those 2 big blowouts I had were all because Tatum didn't know what to do about it. And the Warriors, I think, play a little bit different of a zone. Miami crowds up really close and hogs passing lanes, and Warriors are a little more traditional. So I think maybe they might try and see if Tatum can still figure out a zone with some more wrinkles and different defenders in front of him. But I'm going Warriors in 6 because I just think it doesn't matter who you put in front of them right now.
I am very concerned about Boston for the defensive reasons you mentioned and the fact that we know they're not afraid to hurt Steph Curry. They're not afraid to throw their weight around and get crazy physical. And all of a sudden someone comes up with a bad shoulder and they can't come back. Boston plays. I don't want to, I would say they have a reckless passion they play with that I think, you can see some of that old Boston spirit, those old Boston greats kind of infuses them where they're not afraid to put an elbow in your throat and get the job done, which I appreciate. I really love that. And fortunately, we ran through that Memphis team, which all they did was throw elbows at your throat. So I think we're prepared for that. But I don't think we faced a team in this postseason that, well, I guess you could probably say Dallas, but this Boston team can get hot from 3. They can absolutely get hot from 3, and they got bigs who can knock down threes. And so while I'm not afraid of their offense, so to speak, it's their defense in the combination with the ability to hit threes and Tatum and Brown putting pressure on you where you foul them and now they're back at the line again. And they can muck the game up in ways that the Warriors don't really like. The Warriors don't like a back and forth free throw game, but they've proven that they can win them. But that's where guys like Gary Payton too and Iguodala are wonderful because they can lock you up too. So now nobody's scoring. And then all of a sudden, Steph and Clay are hitting threes. And, now it's a 95-89 win for the Warriors. You're like, damn, like we were losing the whole game. And then all of a sudden, the other team couldn't score. So I think this is going to be 6 games. I do see the Warriors still stealing one on the road, but I would not be surprised if Boston took one in Chase Center. You know what I mean? Like Boston is so unintimidated. So I do feel like top end, they can't mess with us. But if we play a game that's a B-level game, or a B+ level game, I think Boston can definitely give us some problems there. So I'm definitely concerned about this. It's probably one of the few times you'll hear me say like, "Whoa, this will be a tough one." I felt the way about Memphis too, and also, quite frankly, I just don't think Dallas was a great style preparation for this team. You know, after playing Dallas was pretty finesse, like super finesse. You know what I mean? And we love finesse. This is going to be a change in pace. So I'm very interested to see how we deal with that. But at the end of the day, Steph, Clay, and Dre, I'm riding all the way. So yeah, I will say Warriors in. As we wrap this thing up, any advice to those our loyal fans in Dub Nation? First of all, thank you, fans, for supporting Dub Nation HQ. Y'all have made it to what it is today, so we thank you so much. Okay, so Dubs, what are your words of wisdom to the fans for the finals?
Drink heavily. No, I would say trust the guys. Trust the guys. They've gotten us this far. They've been here before. You don't have to have full assurance of something to believe in it, and that's. It's not going to be an easy ride through these finals, but I think the Warriors are going to come out the other end with another ring.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that. And I think they've proven that and they've earned that, particularly this playoff run as well. The one thing I would say is to add to that, like, enjoy it, because these home games at Chase Center, the amount of money that they're going to generate and the amount of kind of international reputation that they generate from being a dynasty is what allows you to pay all these guys in the long run. So a lot of, throughout the playoffs, people have been trying to, they can't keep Wiggins, they can't extend Poole and keep it like, no, chill, right? They can. We talked about this last time, but the critical thing you have to remember is the other side of the ledger, right? How much money are they bringing in against how much money they're taking out? And deep playoff runs are what sustain dynastic teams. And if they want to keep this thing going, which they will, and they're printing the money they're printing, this not only helps pay the bills, it also gives them this global platform to start their own entertainment company. You saw that, right? They have people on record labels out there doing stuff. They're turning into, all their money-making ambitions rely on this being a dynastic team. So enjoy it, and maybe get ready to enjoy it for a few more years yet as well.
Wow. If this plan works, I'm going to need a lot of people to delete their Twitters. I'm going to need a lot of people to just never talk about basketball ever again. Because, it's one thing to not believe in the plan. I mean, hell, Draymond Green himself was like, I'm skeptical. I'm sure, Steph and Draymond and Clay would have liked, another all-star to join them. I'm sure of that. Like, of course, I get it. But the disrespect the front office got, the disrespect they've gotten, it's just out of this world. I don't know where it's coming from. Maybe people are jealous because they're rich. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is we need a rich front office with big brains, because you don't want to end up, no disrespect to the San Antonio Spurs franchise, but they didn't win enough titles. Let's just be real. Yeah, Tim Duncan, and you only won 5 titles. Come on, man. Like, come on, man. I'm sorry. I'm being disrespectful to the legends. It's hard. It's hard to win championships, but we're going for Mike. We're going for Mike, baby. We're going for 6. All right. Come on. This isn't the last dance. This is that little break you have where you get a little tired, your feet hurt, you get some water, you come back. You come back strong for your favorite song. So my advice to Dub Nation is put some respect on Joe Lacob and Bob Myers' names, baby. And Steve Kerr, my coach. All right. Love that guy. All right. This will conclude our podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you next time. Go Dubs.